and today we're going to be talking about the research behind a project called the Connection Framework. I'm going to do a horribly awkward thing. Ask you to say hello to the person sitting on your right, or next to you in any case. Everybody turn your head up. Yeah. Fantastic. I can hear the chatters. You know each other.
Hello.
The name. The great start to the presentation. Thank you guys. And some of you might just be meeting each other for the very first time, ever. But all of you have just made or deepened a connection to another human being, or a cat if you're playing along at Zoom. I can't see any of you guys, but if you have cats, fantastic. So just have you do that horribly awkward thing. Well, let's talk about social connection. Social connection is broadly defined as a person's sense of closeness and belonging to other people. So uplifting social connections which do not put stress or unhealthy expectations on the other person involved, rather, is a series of positive benefits. The most fundamental things we can do for each other as human beings, and healthy human lives. To loneliness, anger, depression, violence, a series of other really awful things, frankly. And with it, we often feel a sense of purpose and belonging that is fundamentally important to the human experience. Now, the process of connection typically has 3 stages. So the first is this individual capacity to connect. How emotionally and or mentally do you feel to connect to other people? Communities. So this is creating communities to begin with, and the maintenance of those communities, making sure those communities stay over time. Throughout these entire 3 phases, you have a couple of requirements for connection. There are a few of these, so not just the ones listed here, but for the purposes of the presentation and the rest of what we're going to talk about, we're going to focus on these 4 core tenets: authenticity, empathy, social support, and focus. Let's go into those a little bit more before we the 4 tenets of social connection that we're going to look at, like I said, are authenticity, empathy, focus, and social support. So connection begins with the individual ability to connect with one another and the feeling of being able to authentically be themselves around other people. This involves feeling safe to be oneself and not pressured to be someone else to fit into a group. It allows individuals to kind of understand each other and engage in these wonderful things: mutual listening, genuine care, and vulnerability. And this is also tied in with focus and social support. So amount and quality of time that you spend with another person is very critical when you're trying to connect, and typically includes active listening, deep conversations, and everyday interactions like making jokes, just saying hi to one another, and stuff like this. There was actually one study done that said you needed 150 hours, I think, to become really good friends with someone of focused time. So you can imagine how long that actually is. Unfocused, distracted, or shallow conversations, so think like awful small talk connection. I'm sure you've sat with people and just this conversation over. So this reciprocal emotion where an individual feels extremely important. Belonging is one of the most fundamental things that people do for one another, and one of the most fundamentally activated things within these group settings. Another really important thing to note here is that belonging is an emotion based on perception, which means that it fully depends on how an individual feels, or if an individual feels like they deserve to be part of a group, and how the other members of that group feel. It also has absolutely nothing to do with the size. You can have 3 amazing friends and have the time of your life, or you could be lonely and love. It works. At the bottom here, we also have the opposites of all of these that are going to become a little bit more important as we move on. Right. So now that we've all awkwardly introduced ourselves and talked a bit about social connection, perhaps you're wondering why I'm giving you social connection and why the heck this has anything to do with technology. Well, as it turns out, it has basically everything to do with technology. As evidenced by the fact that we're on Zoom right now, over the past 20 years and through the global pandemic, we as a society have managed to basically upscale these small connected environments and small connected networks to billions and billions of people. And that creates what I'm going to defined here as connective technologies. Connective technologies are defined here as technologies, computational technologies, creating and sustaining a social network or experience. Instagram, as well as in-person experiences facilitated by technologies such as augmented or virtual realities. This is AR, VR, and similar immersive experiences. And these are tools to help us connect and dimensions like all this wonderful stuff. Back to this, there are about 7,000 and services that these have done is they've allowed us to have communities than ever before. I'm sure you can all agree. I'm sure you've all seen Sunday headlines like this, shouting about what social media and connected technologies are doing to us, how they're making us lonely, they're making us awful, they're making us capable of actually looking at this and going, hello, how are you? We're not exactly wrong, but we're not exactly right either. And this makes sense is because connected technology has a very strong duality. They have really, really harmful effects. Headlines. Good question. Let's take a look at some of the ways that this works in connected technology, the stages of connection and principles of connection we talked about earlier, to try to see what's going on here and what we can do. So, first of all, connected technologies often have safety and anonymity and user-centric groups, which can increase things like authenticity, empathy, and the social support necessary to make individual capacity to connect easier. These are things like communications online, which express thoughts safe for them to talk about in real life. These are things like their gender identity, their mental health, and sometimes even experiences of sexual assault. And this allows people to feel heard and understood and to express their sense equally. User-selected groups, which are groups that are selected by users, I promise you that's relevant as we go on, allows individuals to connect with people is really, really important to the feeling of belonging, feeling like you matter to a group of people. There are also several and connected technologies, which make the individual capacity to connect quite difficult. Among these, we're looking at seen as social comparison and distraction, which mess with all of the these are things like online social media, also fostering an environment for bullying and harassment with anonymous screen names. Acting out personas social media encourages you to act out a hyper-positive part of your life, as we can see down here, very staged, very they're definitely not having as great a time as you, and therefore they suck. The social comparison driven by things, features like the like button, which kind of provide a numerical value of how much other people like. Just really untrue. It's just a button. It gives you a dopamine hit. It feels great. Etc. drives this emotion of feeling incredibly unworthy, hence minimizing social support, etc. We can see that people are actually also attempting to, I guess, fake their own lives to try to make themselves more interesting to people who are supposedly their friends. And that's the aspect of distraction. Constant personalization online, whether that's shopping, whether that's news, whether that's your social media feeds, do provide this kind of expectation of instant gratification that you don't typically get when you're trying to hang out with someone. Makes focus and connection a lot more difficult in this respect. On the positive side, social connective technologies like this can really create communities. This is one of the first things we spoke about. Larger communities are one of the main draws of these technologies, because it's basically an online system of social sharing. Interests, ideas, and experiences to come together and to really bond over things. This includes things like music communities, and also, as we can see here, social movements like the Me Too movement, which was started via this post on Twitter. and the same features even sometimes that can create positive communities, allow you to find people who are interested, who you are interested in, can also steer very negative communities. It's really worth saying it's very normal. It's a concept called homophily. It's very, very common and also quite good for you to find people who you are interested in speaking to. But doing so excessively is extremely dangerous. And the reason that is because if you kind of close yourself off from a view of what society is like, you start losing the empathy necessary to connect with those other groups, to understand those other groups, and to interact with these other groups in a specifically those on Instagram and Facebook have been really under fire recently for this, because we've seen that these algorithms prioritize engagement. That is, they things that you've been looking at and give you political party for whatever reason. It can basically narrow you into echo chambers, isolation groups or isolated groups about very specific, with very specific views and often quite harmful and negative views. You see this process of action. Essentially, somebody ran an experiment where they started with a completely blank Facebook page and just followed the Republicans just to see. Liked a couple things that ended to them via the algorithm, and by the end of this process ended up with essentially a completely right-wing, hardline conservative Facebook feed. I've tried this experiment myself on YouTube. I kid you not, 3 consecutive days just as try. 2 days. It's my entire feed. 2 days. So this is the power of these algorithms. Again, positive, but also can be extremely negative. Just to put that out there, like this is the most tame example of maintaining communities. The social connective technologies have these positive aspects in maintaining social support long after communities have been formed. So again, this is quite obvious. This is a system of social support for individuals and groups. Individually, you have connective technologies like WeChat, WhatsApp, Discord, and the necessary frameworks to communicate more frequently over long distances, thereby strengthening connections. And so sustaining those connections that you have made originally. On a group level, the ubiquity and omnipresence of these communities provides a sense of social presence. And social presence is really important. When somebody asks you, like, do you guys have a fight that you can go to? And the answer is yes. That's what it is. It's really cool to have someone who's there. And this is what these technologies are capable of doing, providing you these ideas and these connections. On the other side, there's always a side. Which is the pressure to be constantly available. It's basically able to switch off, but constant availability can cause negative effects like anxiety, sleep deprivation, and distraction, which we've learned before is detrimental to focus. And as we discussed before, connection needs to be uplifting to convey benefits. So if the benefits of connection are not transmitted, likewise, we also have the very new syndromes from social media and FOMO, fear of missing out. On Instagram, on Facebook, on a lot of these really image-based social technologies. Right. Very connection, and at the bottom we have the 4 parameters that we've been looking at. We see different apps and negative things across this entire spectrum, sometimes even within the same box. So we're looking at all this. Social connective technologies here. What are we doing here? What makes these things be this way? And I would argue that one of the core things is that the approach with which they let's get into the Replacement in this respect refers to replacing the active connection by doing opposite things. So for example, this is not referring to your text because they really liked that picture that you posted last week, instead waiting on the dopamine hit from that like button, things like this. Facilitation, on the other hand, is this idea of taking what we already have, so these social connections that we make in real life, and using technology as a way to bring those to more people in a safe and effective way to make all of us more connected in an extremely healthy way as well. This is an analysis of the unfortunate results in this facilitation and this replacement approach. So you can kind of see here on the green side, this is the facilitation side. You have a lot of these features, a lot of these effects that are happening are very much just online versions of in-person communications. You have read receipts are off, you don't feel the to someone necessarily. You see recommendations of people you may know within reason, no extremely harmful algorithms or anything like that. User-centric curated groups, you get to choose who you interact with, just like you do in real life. Well, on the other side, you have this kind of aspect of replacement. As we've been talking about, this is the introduction of like buttons, non-chronological scrolling, leading to something called doom scrolling, which is a fantastic term. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. Great. Bias, notifications for apps. So I'm sure everyone's seen these lovely notification bars. They're awful. And users into agree. So everyone's just clicked agree to not have to read through the actual legal documents that is presented when you're trying to access. So, ultimately, by design, systematic and algorithmic choices for me in the process of creating these platforms, features, and apps. I would like to say that there is a bit of contention on this point because some studies have found linked to the usage and also how you use these social connective technologies. But the point still stands that there's something here that could be consigned in a very meaningful way. So, ultimately, how connected technologies are designed, i.e., do they include like buttons or not? Do they include algorithms which have bias or not? Matters. Understanding this also presents a alternative. Effects could be designed with technology in positive ways. Hence, to encourage individuals to connect, create connections, and maintain communities through authenticity, empathy, focus, and social support can better facilitate uplifting social connectivity. This is where we're at. So, why does any of this happen? Right. Instagram, Facebook, all of these connected social technologies. I've been talking about them for years. This is not new research. I've been talking about this since like 2013. Facebook and Instagram specifically have already started doing things to try to make this a little bit better. So, for example, making likes, you can choose to do this now, providing features to show how you so you don't spend time doom scrolling, and up to minimize a feature to minimize the types of harmful groups you might be shoved into, stuff like this. And there's also a movement of what are called anti-Instagram apps, which basically focus on pure authenticity. This is one of these apps. We're slowly trying to get better, but why not make this up? Well, first of all, for all of this, it should be an inherent priority to make sure people have the ability and community to feel connected inherently in anything we do. And secondly, we've heard a lot of today, as AI and the metaverse continue to be developed, existence and we are already seeing signs of manipulation, bias, and the disregard for safety. If left unregulated, this can land us in a very precarious position in regards to human connection. This is something we need to take a look at now before we start launching into this realm. just to give you guys a basic idea of what I'm talking about here. So, AI uses data, especially image generating AI, uses data from the internet, which means that it uses everything from the internet, which means it uses Reddit. If you don't know what Reddit is, they exist. Because we've made them. A really good example of this is Lensa AI portrait generator. Has anyone heard this? Very nice. So, face, and it makes you a portrait of yourself. This is super cool. You get really incredibly beautiful digital portraits out of this. Also get very, very sexist results. This is an experiment run by a journalist who put her face, all like the 15 pictures of her face, sampled pictures, and selected that she was man. Selected that she was woman. Can we see the difference between these two pictures? So this is very often used guys being dressed in these really ridiculously cool outfits, doing these more scientific looking tasks, while women are typically drawn as fairies, and also sometimes alongside significantly less clothes than their male counterparts. I make this stuff up. So this other one on a more racist angle here. This is an experiment done in Stable Diffusion, where this was the original image of this really gorgeous model modeling a like a legging and bra set. And the prompt given to Stable Diffusion of this image was, make her have holiday themed clothes. That was the result. We can see what the issue is here. Because the AI is trained on predominantly white faces, it doesn't really know what to do with anyone who's not. This is also what we're going to talk about later, the importance of bringing this non-biased approach into anything you do with connected technologies. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the metaverse, which we've spoken about before. These dangers of haptic reinforcement. So, we're already looking at very questionable things on image generating 2D in front of us on screens, type of interaction. Things get immersive. They get really, really intensely dangerous. So what I mean by that, not lots of experiences which feel like they're real life. And when things happen in these virtual environments that feel like real life, you have the same physiological reactions as if they were going to happen to you in real life. It's a really good example of what this kind of thing can do. This is one of Facebook's early attempts at the metaverse, where essentially there were reports of actually female members of the metaverse being sexually assaulted by other players in the game. Especially things like nests, anything that could bring that interaction to you in a more immersive way. You feel it. It's dangerous. It's horrible. And this had no safety at all. Immediate fix to this was to provide a kind of V-gesture. So this is what you can see there. Yes, that creates a safety bubble around you. But there are sources which argue that this really only contributes to a kind of victim blaming. Oh, well, you should have been doing the V-gesture anyway. This is problematic. And these kinds of features really need to be thought through extremely carefully when anything like this is rolled out. Now, this is going to take a targeted multi-spherical approach across regulation, rules and standards, and also individual designers and developers. You guys, researchers. This is where now the connection framework is a proposal for what we might be able to do in regards to making this more well-known, making connection a key part of what we want to do with connective technology over the next forever, I hope. And so it's like this. I can change slides. There we go. So it starts off like this with a really overarching idea of what we're doing here. So this involves government regulatory bodies, industry rules, and individual designers and teams. On a government level, we're looking at rules and regulations about technologies like AI, what we can use it for, what kind of source data we're using, where we're getting that source data from, all of these kinds of things. And also holding contractors accountable legally. Really important. Very tricky question. On the other hand, you also have industry rules. These are conventions that happen within industry, within agencies, which are a collaboration between clients and industry to establish best practices. We exist to further this idea of connection, agree upon this, and work towards this. And this also extends to individual companies taking responsibility for society. Financially, that's not always viable. All of this, we're looking at a single circle here of understanding connection, prioritizing connection, thinking with diverse groups to avoid some of the consequences we talked about earlier, and constantly checking in on changes. The project is not done. We need to check up on this. What is happening? We need to change the features about this to make it safer for people. Is it having unintended consequences? This kind of thing. And so at this point, I'd like to zoom into the final circle, which is individual designers and teams. Now, this is my own experience working in a creative agency in London, and also the experiences of other people that I've spoken to. So on an individual level, designers, developers can and should make policies to avoid these negative effects again. It is completely within our power to do so, and we should. However, there's a lot of things happening. Throw this at you and expect you to just fix the world, because that is badly. So to do better, or to understand and educate, understand what connection is, why it's important, what we can do to further connection, how can we teach our fellow coworkers, our friends, our family what this means and how we can make it better. Test, and test again with diverse groups to understand. To undo and or avoid the negative biases that we've seen in algorithms, in imagery, in everything so far. We have the power to change this. We just need to do it. And the testing is really, really, really important. Now, if something is precarious, do not shout about it. It's really, really important. If you think something is looking a bit off, mention it to someone, a coworker. Can I get your opinion on this? Right. Say something. And if you think anything is precarious, do not bring it to any kind of client discussions. Because in my experience, I don't know how many of you have worked in agencies, in my experience, the client will always pick the worst option. It is an unspoken rule of the design world, they always pick the wrong option. But what I mean by that is, for example, earlier, this one. If a client asks you to do this for a campaign, and you notice that this kind of thing is happening, do not bring that to client discussions, because somehow it'll find its way into the final product and it's screwed. You as when you're testing, you have the responsibility to vet out these kinds of and lastly, track progress. Different teams, different playbooks. Tracking progress is really important because an app, a campaign, whatever, it's like something in the end when you reach what's the final project, final. I promise this is really the final project. That's not what it ends. It ends when actually aren't. Put it out into the world. The beauty of interaction design, the beauty of communities, is that people will interact with it. People will make amazing stuff. People might also make offers. The tracking progress is really, really important to understanding how things are developing and also if anything needs to be changed. Now, of course, different teams will take different things. UX designers, creative technologists, researchers, academics, everyone's going to have a completely different or pretty different commitment to what kind of things they're looking out for. Obviously, my daily life as a creative technologist, I'm not really looking at research papers versus an academic who might be looking at those research papers, but not looking at how to code something in Python and the watchouts associated with either of those tasks. So that's really, really important. How's it doing for time?
Nearly there is fine by us.
Cool. Right, so this takes me to the demo part of the presentation, which is an online tool associated with this idea of the connection framework. Now, this is just a proposal. This is something that I was thinking about as I was doing this, but it's something that I think could be developed, specifically in regards to these individual practices. This is an online tool that uses the parameters that we've talked about before, the parameters, and also some negative parameters that where you can kind of type in your product name and track your progress. The project is scoring. What kinds of effects on empathy, focus, safety do you think your project might have, and how might that affect connection in the long run? These are just some screenshots of how this works. The background automatically changes according to your score. So down here, it's pretty hard to see, but you have like a 3 out of 10. It is fully red. Do not bring this product to market. It sucks. Go back to the drawing board. You do have products like this. Let's see by Tellards. It's a really great project. We recommend taking a look at it. Where one effect is scored particularly high, pretty low safety concern manipulation. Maybe take a look at that factor a little bit, but you're looking pretty good. Now, this kind of thing does rely on very honest self-reflection, which goes back to our education point that we were talking about before. We also have danger scores down here. For example, Instagram's a great one. So if any of these parameters go over the halfway point, reevaluate your project. This is an example of examples that you can use to judge these kinds of interactions, and also use to see where your project is on this scale. So what kind of low positive parameters do we have for focus? What kind of high positive parameters do we have? Examples of projects that do that, and the exact aspect of that project which works particularly well for that thing. This is an example of a benchmarking system, which is necessary for projects like these, because otherwise, you know, what are you comparing against? You can't really even do that consistently over an industry if you don't. This is one example of doing that. And of course, you can also bring that into things like a card set, where you can what kind of use this to your opinions on what has a negative score, what has a positive score, and why those scores exist. I do actually have a live demo that I'm going to move past that. If anyone wants to see that, I can talk to me later. And yeah, so lastly, we're just going to talk about watchouts. Like everything else, the system is not perfect, the connection framework as a whole. Like everything else, there are watchouts, there are improvements to be made. What we're looking at here is funding from government, agreement from industry, a commitment to test and reopen long-term projects long into the times that they're alive, rechecking the criteria and scoring to ensure accuracy and correctness. This counts for projects like this too. This isn't exempt. And also this subjectivity in defining connection. This isn't an objective process. We're not always going to get everything 100% correct. Everything within our power to try. And trying to the best of our ability is really what we should be doing. Collectively, we have the power and the choice to create and improve connection. But ultimately, it is a choice. And it is one that we have to choose to make. Thank you very much.